So here we go. Hod Dibben. There was something sinister and ominous about the dark stranger who came to my home with a business proposition. It was a proposition I could not entertain. And as he seized his briefcase and swept angrily out the door, he paused to place his hand heavily on my shoulder and say, "You can't win, Dibben. We'll get what we want in the end." I shuddered with foreboding. I could not escape the dread feeling that with this man, the hot breath of evil, which had pursued me for years, was on me again. The stranger was a Hungarian-born lawyer of international repute called Andre Gabor Boszormenyi. The business deal he sought was the control of the nightclub in Knightsbridge, Esmeralda's
Now we're
Barn.
going to get into his enemy. We're in the Tatler. Tatler, oh my God, comes up in a few things, does Tatler. And we're going back to 1935, my friends. And there he is with the pretty young thing there. The pretty young thing is Miss Martha McGrain. And they miss out the G there, but it's Andre Gabor Tihamer Boszormenyi. And Boszormenyi is one of the most interesting characters. Aristocrat, Hungarian, I believe a spy, an agent. He's also a master engineer, a master solicitor, a master art stealer, amongst many other things, and a master Satanist, according to Hod Dibben, the man who will try and get Esmeralda's barn off him in exchange for Patsy Morgan Dibben's life. That's a weird one. And there she is again on a bike, looking pretty in 1935 around the same time. A year later, she's dead. Yeah, her mum was a poet. Doesn't end well for Miss McGrain. I don't know how she died, but she doesn't look unhealthy, does she? So I've been yet to find out how she died. Now, Boszormenyi during the war, and this is going through the source, some of the sources. So this is very interesting. This is World War alien internees between 1939 and 1945. Andre Boszormenyi, and basically it shows him going into getting taken by Metropolitan Police and interned on the 9th of the 12th, 1941. Suspicious mainly because he was Hungarian. Hungary had at that time in 1941 joined in with the war alongside Germany, and he became an enemy of the state. But I think around here he's possibly recruited. And anyway, when the war doesn't go well, most of the other side say, "Yeah, I'll join you." And one of the things he invented was these things: pressure exchangers, and other type of machinery for jet engines. And he did it alongside Gendrasic and George, I think he'd say Georgie Gendrasic, Gyorgy, Georgie Gendrasic, was a Hungarian man who owned a company that made parts for the Nazi fighter planes, like Klaus Schwab's father's company did, made little bits for the Nazi fighter planes. And Andre Boszormenyi, after the war, was helping Gendrasic with that sort of stuff, with designing jet engine parts, which seems like, you got to be pretty good at your stuff to design jet engine parts. So you must be a bit of a master engineer, it seems. This is Andre Gabor Tihamer Boszormenyi. Here he is. Temporary status in Brazil. This is a Brazilian visa. And he says he's from Budapest, Hungarian nationality. He says he was born on the 22nd of the 1st, 1907, which would make him about the same age as Horace Dibben. But his nationality is down as British. His occupation is advocate, I suppose. So that's probably a solicitor. Estado Civil, solitario, he's single, solitero, and that means he's a solicitor. And his father and mother were Oscar and Helena Boszormenyi. And his residence is Leicester General Hospital, Gwendolyn Road, Leicester at this point, which is pretty strange. But this guy is a bizarrity. He's an interesting character. And he's got lots of different... I'm in the National Gallery site here. I'm here at the National Gallery site. See, there you go, National Gallery. Here at the National Gallery site, there's an acquisition file dated between the 5th of March to the 9th of November. And this, as you see, description, correspondence with Caesar de Hawk, repurchase of Levi de Chapelet, formerly in Jacques Doucet collection, correspondence with Andre Boszormenyi, rearrangements for making payments out of trust funds for cuttings from Evening News, Daily Telegraph, and Evening Standard, in addition to Gallery's press release announcing the acquisition, directors, hand notes on the picture and purchase price. What's interesting about this is Boszormenyi arranging art, and this isn't just normal art. This is Caesar de Hawk, who's a man who got chased around by the Monuments Men, the famous Monuments Men, because he used to sell hawker, used to sell stolen Nazi art. And Boszormenyi is like doing art deals, which is really bizarre. He's hanging around in loads of different places, doing loads of interesting things. He's an interesting character. He is inventor, solicitor, and art dealer. And here we go. We are on here in Tatler again, and this edition of Tatler is October the 26th, 1955. So this is just after, really, a few months after Ruth Ellis's hanging, and a month more after than Esmeralda Gouland's death. And here's Andre Boszormenyi with Mademoiselle Mendoza, wife of the Cuban ambassador. So in these pictures, of course, you can see all of these posh aristocratic types. So this is Viscount de Orff and Madame Hageloff, the Marquis Alain Clara. And these guys love their names. They love being royalty. This woman up here is a Marchioness of Reading. Look at that face. See, oh, nice. The Marchioness. Didn't know that was such a thing. Marchioness is the thing. And the Japanese ambassador. So the Japanese ambassador's there too. That's interesting. So down here, as you see, there's Boszormenyi, and he's at this stage, his first photos show him being quite a handsome young man, but it doesn't go well for him. He drinks a lot. He's obviously eating caviar and drinking the best possible wine and champagne. He's put on a little bit of weight. So, he looks a bit funky, as you can tell by that picture. This picture of him, though, on his card. Look at those eyes. Look at those eyes. Hod Dibben said, the devil himself. The devil himself. And there's a lot of similarities between this guy and Hod Dibben, because Hod Dibben, of course, is an antique collector and art dealer. And this guy also does the same sort of thing. And there's some sort of wrestling control of a nightclub. And that's got to be due to the fact that Esmeralda's barn was one of the main points for Soviets and Western spies to drop their information. So it's extremely interesting. That's if it's even true, because Hod Dibben, of course, is a character in himself and lies nearly every second word. So this is why some of this is really interesting. So Boszormenyi older, and here he is. This is a bit early, I suppose. This is probably about 1950. What's that? I'm not sure if that's 56, might be 56. Spanish embassy reception. So who was it here? Well, of course, Boszormenyi is up here. Mr. A. Boszormenyi. who's meeting people. And there's Peter Fursby. There's Tom Page, the ball committee. I don't even know what that is. Be interested to find out. Oh, there you go. Mrs. Duncan Sandys, daughter of Sir Winston and Lady Churchill, left. So this is Winston Churchill's daughter. Greets Sir Beverly and Lady Baxter. So these are aristocracy again. Boszormenyi is hanging out with the aristocracy, and there he is. He looks a bit like he did when he was younger, so this must be earlier. I would suppose that Boszormenyi, who's described wrongly as Monsieur R. Boszormenyi, but it's definitely our boy Andre Boszormenyi, with Viscount Aubert de Tiensis and Senor Donji Nadal, first secretary at the Spanish embassy. So this is the Spanish embassy, I suppose, still during Franco's reign. So, I mean, Cuba, Japan, Spain, they all seem like they're the recent enemies or to be enemies or were enemies, you know. Yeah, you can tell this is earlier. This is April the 9th, 1950. And there's more, of course, there's the Brazilian ambassador who's there now. We know Boszormenyi has a Brazilian over here. He has his Brazilian visa stamped. And when is this stamped? This is for date is 1950. So that's 1950 that's stamped. And this is 1950. So he's actually meeting the Brazilian ambassador down here in London with his wife by going to this event. And there's a lot of famous people at this event, but there he is, looking like he doesn't want to be photographed. That's like, please don't photograph me face. And it's very interesting. So who he is, who knows? Who he is, who knows? There you go. Oh, also, I found him noted down in the Daily Telegraph in 1950 as well as hanging out at dinner in the Belgian for the Belgian ambassador, and it notes a load of really, really rich people who are there too. Yeah, really interesting stuff. So, I mean, this here is England National Probate Calendar. And this is, I suppose, the end of Boszormenyi. Where is he? There you go. Andre Gabor Tihamer Boszormenyi of 23 Down Street, London, W1, died 6th of January 1957. Just like Hod Dibben says. Probate, London, 25th of February, to Philip Beaumont Frere, solicitor, someone he acted as advocates to, and he lived in the same place as, or at least registered down in the same place as, maybe his business address. And Sir Henry Joseph de Avidor Goldsmith Baronet. That guy ends up taking over Pergamon Press when Robert Maxwell's ousted, and also goes to work for the American Israeli Bank just after this. So, or about a decade after this. So that's really interesting character to be involved in this. And look, effects £43,000, which is probably a lot of money. It's probably like $1 million or something in today's money, maybe more. Resealed, Bahamas. So this was I don't know what resealed means. That's interesting. Maybe there's no one for it to go to. 28th of June 1957, but it was taken to the Bahamas to be done. Everywhere else got all these different places, but Boszormenyi's will took place in the Bahamas. Now that is a place we're going to go in the 5th of this Black Hand series. I find that very interesting. And there's a little evidence that Philip Beaumont Frere there, who was mentioned there, lived in the same place as Andre Boszormenyi, there down the London Electoral Register for 1950. And Philip Beaumont Frere lives in the same place as Andre Boszormenyi. So they must be friends, maybe more. Who knows? I don't know. Do you know? I don't think you do. And it says in this newspaper, we got Evening Standard, page 77, said lawyer leaves 31,969. London lawyer, Mr. Andre Gabor Tihamer Boszormenyi left 43,000, 31,000, something in his will.
It was being run by Patsy, the grocer's daughter, whom I had taken into my home and brought up with the extravagant idea of turning her into the perfect woman. I could not entertain the idea of betraying her happiness by helping this outsider wrest control of her club. But there was something about his manner that made me uneasy. And that night, an incident occurred which fanned my uneasiness into the blaze of fear. After some hours of fitful sleep, I awoke with a start at the sound of tapping on my bedroom window. I looked out thinking Patsy had forgotten her key. There was nobody there, but I heard a voice, almost like a whispering on the wind, saying,
"To our servant in black will fall the responsibility of meting to you your deserts."
Not deserts, deserts. I shouted back in panic, but there was no reply, and still no one to be seen. I shut the window and I sat in a chair helplessly. I knew that now the influence of the Black Brotherhood of Satan was reaching out to me again. Ever since I had dared to desert a black magic circle which I joined in wartime RAF officer in the Orkneys, that influence had pursued me. As a fully fledged member of that circle, I had surrendered my body and soul to the worship of evil. I revelled in the wildest orgies and rituals attended by men and women equally as depraved as I. Willingly I rejected goodness, honesty, and purity. In their place I embraced lust and obscenity. Only after 2 years of this depravity, when I attended a particularly loathsome and horrible ceremony, was I jerked back to my senses and convinced that I must quit this evil cult. I wanted to start life afresh and forget the foulness of my past. It was not easy, for I had been warned of the penalty for betrayal.
Desertion.
Vengeance would come to me by way of business disasters. The sudden death of my father, deprivation under his will, the death of a great friend in a car crash, and desertion by a person to whom you are devoted. And as I sat by my bedside now, trembling at my experience with that strange mocking voice, I was forced to reflect that every part of that terrible forecast had come true except the last. Did this new sign of the Brotherhood's activity against me mean that the final part of the prophecy was to be fulfilled? A person whom you are devoted? Who else could that mean but Patsy? The possibility of her leaving me was dreadful thought. On her I had showered money and affection. I asked nothing of her in return except her loyalty, and on that I was convinced I could depend. The thought gave me courage, and I dismissed from my mind the voice at the window and the visit from the dark stranger which had preceded it. 3 nights after the first visit, Boszormenyi called again. He stood at my front door and sneered.
"The devil will be your judge."
Then, without another word, he walked away. Now I was convinced that in some strange way this man was to be the instrument of final vengeance against me. My fears were soon confirmed. A few days later, Patsy suddenly packed her belongings at the flat and left me without explanation. After 10 years of her friendship, I was alone again. I had no idea where she had gone, but I felt sure Boszormenyi had something to do with her disappearance. I pleaded with him to tell me where Patsy was.
"She will not return, Hod Dibben,"
he sneered. I was so angry that for the first time since I left the black magic circle, I began to utter the vile oaths that I had been taught. For hours that night, I sat in my flat, staring at the spot where Boszormenyi had sat, and heaped upon him every death-dealing curse to which I could lay tongue. The days and weeks went by. There was still no sign of Patsy, except newspaper reports that she was on the continent because she was trying to escape from a man. My curses against Boszormenyi did not cease. Then one day I saw a paragraph about him in the newspaper. In a rage at the sight of his accursed name, I crumpled up the paper and placed it in the fireplace. Set fire to it with an oath. Next day I saw another item in the news about him. It announced that Andre Gabor Tihamer Boszormenyi had suddenly dropped dead after a heart attack at the age of 49. I was seized with sudden remorse. Had my curses really had that effect? I was overcome by the thought that I might have cast a spell which had caused a man's death. Of all the mental and spiritual tortures which my embroilment with black magic had brought me, this was the worst of all.